All rise, we will away. The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia is now in session. L'audience du Tribunal Pénal International pour l'ex-Yougoslavie est ouverte. Please be seated.
Your Honors, we're in open session.
Yes, Mr. Knight.
May we go into close private session, please?
All rise, we will away. Please be seated.
The position is this, that the problems with the generator which led to our not being able to use the first courtroom have not been resolved, but we have been able to use this courtroom, although with some adaptation. And we're grateful to those who have adapted to allow us to do that and for the hearing to continue. It is imperative that we finish the witness of this, the evidence of this witness today. Accordingly, the sitting will be now from 10:50 when we began. We will sit for an hour and a half. That will be till 12:20. We will then adjourn for half an hour and then sit until 2:35 with the indulgence of the interpreters who for once are in front of us. Mr. Knight, having made a calculation, it seems that if you would finish very rapidly, it may just be possible for us to finish today, and indeed, if possible, address some of the administrative matters. But if you could wind up in 5 minutes or so.
May I, without breaching the recent ruling on written statements, deal with it in this way? I'll lead.
Yes, as much as possible,
And
of course.
when we separated in the last court, we'd been looking at 432 tab 18, 2 video clips, the second of which showed Arkan dealing with some Muslim prisoners whom he was addressing in terms revealed in tab 18. They were told they would be taken to a hotel for coffee. Witness 129, in one sentence, what were you told later by Tigers about the fate of those Muslim prisoners?
As I saw the tape, like most of the people in Serbia, I saw the footage on television actually. I asked them what happened to those Muslims? And afterwards I was told that I was never to ask that again, never to ask about that again, and that's what I did, or rather didn't do.
The other man seen on that tape, Luban Echim, was he the commander of the Banja Luka DB who worked closely with Arkan in that operation, visiting Frankie when he came to Belgrade, but also visiting Arkan? Yes or no, please, if I'm right about that. Did he,
Yes.
Luban Echim and Arkan, see Frankie regularly during the Banja Luka operations? And a man known by the surname Kaikuk and Radomir Semanovic, known as Shubaru from Banja Luka, did they also visit the Belgrade headquarters in October 1995?
Yes.
Turning from that to the Prijedor area specifically, did two tigers, Ristic and Sharac, speak to you about being in Prijedor with Arkan, where 16 tigers were killed in combat, and in a phrase, their explanation for the loss of those tigers was?
The 16 tigers were killed in that entire Banja Luka operation, and Prijedor was included in that.
And what was the comment on why they died? What was the comment on Arkan's military capability?
What was said was that Arkan knew nothing about military, or rather had no military capabilities for leading soldiers into battle.
Simo Druljača came to Belgrade twice in 1995, and did Arkan tell you that he and Druljača had been together in Prijedor? And did Druljača receive a formal certificate of thanks from the SDG, although he was a commander of the Prijedor DB?
Yes.
Mihailo Ulemek, head of the Tigers military police section for the Banja Luka operation in the way you described generally yesterday, was he once required to return to base on grounds of torturing Serb deserters, but he was subsequently re-engaged when there was a requirement for him?
Yes.
I will skip Exhibit 432, tab 19. Did Ristic, Momir, and Mladen Shadac tell you of the killing of civilians, Muslims, in Sanski Most, and were they in a state when they came back home from Sanski Most?
Yes.
Indeed, did they give a description of killing Muslims in the mosque as they prayed? And they described this as, in terms of it being hell and their hardest operation.
Yes. They described it and said that in a mosque in Sanski Most, while the Muslims were praying, they killed them.
In 1995, August, after Operation Storm, in Erdut camp, did you see 500 to 600 men arriving in a convoy of civilian buses, they being mostly refugees from the Knin Krajina, some of them, though, having been in Belgrade for many years? Did you discover that they'd been arrested in Serbia, briefly detained in the Sremska Mitrovica prison before being brought to Erdut, where they were lined up to have their heads shaved, given uniforms and rifles, and then sent the next day to hold the demarcation line between East Slavonia and Croatia under the command and direction of the Tigers?
Yes.
Mladen Sharac, I beg your pardon, saying that the operation in Erdut involved the arrest of about 500 such men. 5,000 such men, I beg your pardon. I'm grateful for this pack.
Yes.
The decision to round up those men being made by Serbian authorities, apparently. Thank you,
Yes.
Witness B 129. I'm sorry to have had to deal with that at such speed. You'll be asked further questions.
Yes, we're just going to close session for private session for one moment. We must finish this
Now in
witness.
open session, Your Honors.
We must finish this witness today, Mr. Milosevic, so don't take up too much of your time with the argument.
Molim vas da proverite ovo što
Would you please
kažete,
check
jer
what you have
svedokinja je
just
sve
stated,
vreme,
because the
osim prvih
witness,
nekoliko
except
minuta
for the
koji se
first
ticale
few
njene
minutes when she
identifikacije,
spoke about
govorila
her
na otvorenoj
identification,
sednici.
she was speaking in
pogledajte
open
sami u
session. Take a look for
transcript.
yourselves
Kada
in the
imate zatvorenu
transcript.
sednicu?
Just don't argue. Just deal with the matters in the way that we has been suggested. There are those areas which should be dealt with in private session. Apart from that, everything is in open session.
Vi ćete sami moći da procenite
You
i da
yourselves will be
vidite
able to
da ono
assess,
što ja pitam može da se odnosi
and you'll be able to see
isključivo
that
na ono
what
što je
I'm
bilo na
able to ask her
otvorenoj sednici.
will be
Pošto ja ne želim da se
referring to
zatvara
what
sednica.
she spoke about in open session, because I do not wish to go into private session.
Drugo, gospodine May,
Secondly,
da
Mr. May,
raščistimo jedno tehničko
Can
pitanje,
we clear up a technical matter?
odnosno sasvim egzaktno pitanje.
A rather exact
Do
matter,
ovog
actually.
prekida do koga je
Up until
došlo
this
zbog
interruption, which
tog kvara na
occurred
generatoru,
because of the
na kraju krajeva
breakdown
nije
with the
bitno.
generator, that's not
Znate o čemu
important.
govorim.
You know what I'm talking
Svedokinja je
about.
svedočila
The
puna
witness
3
was
sata.
testified for a
Juče
full
tačno
3
od
hours.
11 do
Yesterday,
15
exactly
do
from
2,
11
umanjeno za
to
jednu
quarter to
pauzu,
2,
to je
minus
2
a
sata i
break,
25
which means
minuta.
2 hours and
Jutros
20
pre
minutes.
prekida
This morning
35
before the
minuta,
break, she
što čini 3
testified for
sata.
35
I
minutes,
sada,
which makes it 3
u ovom
hours.
nastavku,
And now in this
još 15
continuation,
minuta, što
she
čini
had
3
another
sata i
15
15
minutes, which
minuta.
makes it 3 hours and
Prema
15
tome,
minutes in total.
Imajte
Dobro.
u vidu,
So please bear in mind,
The total was 3 hours, in fact. I've noted it at the time. For instance, you're wrong about this morning's times, but it was only 10 minutes just now, probably less, and only 25 minutes earlier. But you've got 3 hours, so let's get on with it. If you need it, if you need this to take up 3 hours with this witness,
ovo su egzaktne činjenice koje možete
well,
proveriti
those are
na
exact
transkriptu.
facts, and you
Moj
can
saradnik
check
je
them out
proverio
on
na
the transcript.
transkriptu
My
tačno po
associate
minutima.
checked it out and looked at the
Pa se
minutes
nadam da
to
i
the
vama,
minute.
pošto vam je
So
transkript dostupan,
I
može
assume
da
that as you
bude
have
vrlo-
the transcript
You're
available,
wasting time.
you can also.
this is going to count against you, all this argument. Now let's get on with it.
Dobro, gospodine May.
Very well, Mr. May.
Ovo nije prvi put da se
This
ne
is not
slažemo
the
čak
first
i
time
o
that we do not agree,
brojkama koje su
even
sasvim
about figures
Sorry,
and
sorry.
numbers which are very exact things.
Svedokinjo 129.
Witness 129.
Vi ste radili
You worked
prvo
first
u okviru izborne kampanje stranke
within the
Srpskog
election
jedinstva,
campaign
tako?
for the Serbian Unity Party.
Kratko
That's right,
vreme,
isn't it?
koliko
Answer
vidim
yes.
iz vaše izjave,
And for a brief period of
već
time, as
na
I can see from your
samom
statement
početku,
at the very beginning.
u jesen
And that was the autumn
93.
of
godine. je li tako?
1993. That's right, isn't it? Answer yes, that's right.
Dobro, ovdje piše oktobar, novembar,
All
ali
right, it says October, November
meni je
here,
svejedno.
but I
To
don't
znači
mind.
radili ste
Does that
2
mean that
meseca
you worked for 2 months
u okviru predizborne kampanje.
within the frameworks
To
of
je
the
bio vaš
election
prvi
campaign?
kontakt
Answer
i,
yes, and that was your first
prva
contact,
aktivnost vezana
the
za
first
stranku
activities
Srpskog
linked to the Party of Democratic Unity, Serbian Party of Democratic Unity.
Prošli su
Answer
izbori,
yes.
to je bio privremeni
The elections
posao
passed,
i
this
vi
was a temporary
niste
job,
više tamo radili.
and you
tako?
no longer work there, is that right?
Onda ste
The interpreters
ponovo
note that they have to change
negde
channels
u jesen
between the
94.
speakers, so
godine
could
se
the
tamo
speakers
zaposlili,
make
je li tako?
breaks between question and answer, otherwise we lose the answer. Thank you.
Just one moment. We had an intervention by the interpreters. Can you pause, both of you, between question and answer to allow them to change channels? So, Mr. Milosevic, would you kindly do that? And witness B129, when you hear the question, pause and then answer. Yes?
Dobro, gospodine May.
Very well,
vodit ću
Mr. May.
računa
I will
nadam
bear
se da
that in
vodim
mind,
računa o tome
and I hope that I always do bear that in
posle
mind
ovog prilično dugog iskustva s vama.
after the long experience I have had with you here.
93. godine
In
to
1993,
kratko vreme koje ste
That brief
radili
time that, for the brief
bila
time that
je
you worked,
intenzivna kampanja.
was
tako?
there was an intensive campaign going on, right?
Da.
Yes?
Niste se bavili ničim drugim nego izbornom
You didn't do
kampanjom.
any other
Tako.
jobs, just dealt with the campaign, the election campaign, right? Answer yes.
Dakle, tek kasnije,
So it was only
znači
later,
od septembra 94.
from September
godine kad ste se ponovo
1994,
zaposlili,
when
vi
you
ste
got a job
radili i
again,
na poslovima Srpske dobrovoljačke garde.
you worked
Jel
in
tako?
affairs concerning the SDG, the Serbian Volunteer Guard, right?
Da li biste mogli to da objasnite?
Yes,
Na
could you
kojim poslovima ste radili
could you explain what jobs you did, what work
od
you did
jeseni 94.
from the autumn of 1994?
Jasnit ću.
Yes, I will explain. At the end of August 1994,
Im je trebala osoba za
they
rad
needed somebody
prostorijama
to work in the offices and premises of the Party of Serbian Unity, because at the time the Guard had been disbanded.
Vrlo dobro.
All
Dakle,
right,
vi niste
fine.
radili na poslovima
So,
nikakvim vezanim za Srpsku
You never
dobrovoljačku
did
gardu.
anything, any jobs
To,
linked to
kako
the
ovdje
Serbian
kaže,
Volunteer
otprilike od
Guard,
septembra 94.
as
kad
it
ste
says
se
here,
ponovo
from about
zaposlili.
September 1994 when
Jer je
you
ona
took
bila
up your job
sformirana.
again, because the
Je
Guard
tako?
had been disbanded. Is that right? Answer
A
yes.
kad ste otprilike
And when, roughly speaking,
imali bilo
did you
kakve
have any
veze
connection
sa
with
poslovima Srpske dobrovoljačke garde?
anything
Kad
to
ste
do
počeli da ih
with
imate?
the Serbian Volunteer Guard? When did you
Pošto
start
tada niste
working
imali, radili
for
ste
them
opet za
again?
stranku Srpskog jedinstva.
Because you were working for the Unity Party.
novembra 90.
From November 1994,
kada je garda
when the Guard
bila uključena
was
u operacije
involved in the operations
koji
once
smo
again,
radili u štabu,
all of us who had worked at the headquarters of the Serbian Unity Party in Ljutice Bogdan Street automatically began to work for the SDG or jobs related to
Dakle,
it.
vaše
Question, right? So that
lično
means that your
iskustvo
personal experience
vezano
linked
za
to
rad Srpske
work with
dobrovoljačke
the work
garde
of the Serbian
datira
Volunteer Guard
od novembra
dates from
94.
November
Da li sam vas dobro
1994.
razumio?
Have I understood you correctly? Answer yes.
E sada mi molim vas
Now tell me
odgovorite
this, please.
kako je moguće
How is
da
it
pošto
possible
vaše,
That
po vašem
as,
kazivanju,
according to your
lično
own
iskustvo
testimony and your personal
aktivnostima
experience
Srpske dobrovoljačke
related to the
garde
activities of the
datira
SDG,
od novembra 94.
as it dates back to November
Vi
1994.
ovde svedočite
How could you
o
testify
91.,
here in this
2.,
courtroom about
3.,
1991, 2,
4.,
3, 4?
gotovo 4
That is to say,
godine
for almost 4
pre nego što
years
ste prvi put došli u
before
kontakt sa
you came
poslovima
into
Srpske
contact
dobrovoljačke
with the affairs of the SDG in the first place.
U svakom mom svedočenju sam ja
Whenever I
period
testified,
od
the
91.
period from
započeo
1991,
sa februarom 93.
inclusive with February 1993, which was the last operation in Knin, I always stated
priče koje su
that
pričali
these were what the people said, what the members of the Serbian volunteer guards said and talked about, those of them who worked at the headquarters,
bili ranjeni.
because they were
Većina
wounded,
njih
because most of them, most of those who had taken
91.
part
godine,
from 1999 onwards, 91 onwards,
kada bi bili
in the
ranjeni,
operations when they were
nakon
wounded,
toga bi radili u
after that
štabu,
they would work in the headquarters once they were wounded.
koji su opterećeni
The soldiers
nekim sećanjima
who had their memories and recollections of the things they had experienced would usually talk about where they had been and
Dobro,
what they had
samo da to
experienced.
raščistimo. Dakle,
Question,
sve
all
ono
right?
što se
Can we just
odnosi
clear
na
that up?
vreme do
Everything that
novembra
relates to
94.
November
godine
1994
je nešto što ste vi
is
od
something
nekoga čuli.
that you heard from someone else, right? Answer, heard, seen through the documents, because there were always facts and information at the headquarters written down in documents which related to the operations they were engaged in. And every year, when the Guards' Day was celebrated, they would mention all the battles they had been in, ranging from 1991 up until the year the celebration was held.
Pa dobro, mnogo toga je bilo i u novinama.
All right, and a lot of that was written up in the press, too, those ceremonies of yours. Answer, yes, that's right.
Prema tome, aktivnost Srpske
So
dobrovoljačke
the
garde nije
activities
bila
of the
nikakva tajna.
Serbian Volunteer Guard was no secret. No, it wasn't.
Vi ste rekli da Srpska,
You said that
ta zgrada stranke
the building
Srpskog
itself,
jedinstva koja je služila
the
kao
Serbian
štab,
Unity Party
nije bila ničim
building,
označena.
which was
Zar-
used as
zar nije na njoj
headquarters,
bila
had no
zastava
plaque
stranke
on it.
Srpskog
Didn't it have the party flag outside? Wasn't it flying the flag? Answer, there was a flag, but there was no plaque with a title. It didn't say anywhere as a plaque that the Party of Democratic
Da li
Unity
je
of
sporno
Serbian
da je
Unity
stranka
was there?
Srpskog jedinstva bila
Question, well, I assume we're not
regularno
challenging the fact
registrovana stranka
that it was
kao još
a regular
stotinak i nešto
party
više stranaka u
registered just
Srbiji,
like some
da je učestvovala
100
na
other
izborima
parties in Serbia,
i da
that
je
it
njen
took part in the
predsjednik čak bio
elections,
izabran za
and
narodnog
that its
poslanika.
president was elected as a deputy, parliamentary deputy. Answer, I have to put you right. He was not a deputy in parliament, its representative. He was elected as a candidate. He was put forward as a candidate on the part of a group of citizens when the Party of Serbian Unity was founded. It was at those elections, and they took place on the 12th of November. No, I'm sorry, the 12th of December, 1993. The Party of Serbian Unity did not receive a single seat in parliament, in the Serbian parliament.
Dobro, ja se
Question,
samo
all
sjećam
right.
toga
I just
da je
remember
Željko
that what happened
Ražnatović,
was that Željko Ražnatović,
Arkan, bio jedno vreme
nicknamed
narodni poslanik.
Arkan, was a popular deputy at one time.
Pre
Answer,
osnivanja
yes, but
stranke,
before
znači kao
the
kad je
party
grupa
was
građana.
set
Ne
up.
ulazimo u to.
Question, yes, put
Recite
forward
mi,
on the
molim
part of a
vas,
group of citizens. Answer, yes. Question, now tell me this, please.
Da prvo raščistimo
Let's
jednu
clear
stvar.
one point up first.
Nije sporno da je reč znači
We're not
Srpskoj
disputing the fact
dobrovoljačkoj
that we're
gardi,
talking
je li tako?
about the Serbian Volunteer Guard, the SDG.
Da li
That's
to
right, isn't it? Answer,
podrazumeva ne
yes.
samo
Now, does
formalno,
that
nego i neformalno,
apply not only
da su nju
in formal
sačinjavali
terms, but
dobrovoljci.
informally as well, that the Guard was made up of volunteers? Is that right?
Da li
Answer,
je bilo
yes.
koji član garde
Question,
bio
was
prisilno
any member
regrutovan
of
da
the
bude član garde?
Guard recruited forcibly? Answer, no.
A da li se sjećate tih
And do you
godina
happen to remember
da su
during those
još
years
neke druge
that
stranke
there were some other parties
osnivale razne
as
svoje
well
garde?
which set up their own guards corps? Answer, yes, I remember that
Sjećate se
too.
Srpske garde,
Question,
Srpskog
you'll remember
pokreta
the
obnove,
Serbian Guard of the Serbian
tako?
Revival Movement, for instance.
Sjećate se
Answer,
raznih
yes. Question, and I'm sure you'll
takvih
remember
pokreta,
all the other
pretpostavljam.
movements that were burgeoning.
A da li se sjećate da
Answer,
su
yes.
sve te stranke koje su
Question, do you remember that all those
svoje
parties
garde
which set up
ili
their
neke
own guards
formacije
or
bile
certain
opozicione
units and
stranke?
formations were in fact opposition parties in Serbia?
Jesu, ali stranka
Answer, yes.
Srpskog jedinstva
However,
nije
the
bila
Serbian Unity
opoziciona
Party
stranka.
was not an opposition party.
A po čemu to zaključujete?
How do you come to that
Tome
conclusion?
što u statutu stranke
Answer,
piše
because
da je
it
to
states in the
stranka
statute of the party that it is a
Stranka
party of the
centra
center.
ne znači da je
Question, a
stranka
party of
koja
the center does
učestvuje u
not mean
vlasti.
that it is a party that takes
Što je stranka centra,
a
to je
part
njeno,
in power and
kako bih
authority in
rekao,
ruling the country.
političko
The fact that it
opredeljenje.
was
Dakle,
a
nije ni
party
levica,
of the
ni desnica,
center means
nego
that it was neither the
centar.
left nor the right, but it was the center.
Jeste, ali stranka
Answer,
Srpskog
yes,
jedinstva
but the
nikada
Serbian
nije bila u
Unity
koaliciji
Party
sa
was
ostalim
never in a
opozicionim
coalition with the
strankama.
other opposition parties, and so on and so
dobro.
forth. Question,
Molim
all
vas,
right, fine.
pošto ste o ovome
Now,
govorili
as you
na
spoke about this
otvorenoj
matter in
sednici,
open session, what I'm going to ask
vi
you
me
next,
upozorite ako
please
mislite
warn
da
me
ima
if you
nešto
think that
što
there is anything
ste
that I'm
rekli na
going to ask
zatvorenoj
you which you spoke about in private
Ja
session.
ne želim
Yes, I
namerno
will.
da
Question,
bilo
it is
kakav
not
podatak
my
iznesem koji nije bio
intention to present
otvorenoj
any
sednici.
piece of information that wasn't stated in open
Dakle,
session.
ovo pitanje
All right, yes, I'll do that.
dobrovoljačka
Question, so this
smo
question
raščistili
of
i
volunteer
u nazivu i u
members. We've cleared that up
realnosti
both
reč je
in the
bila o
title of the
dobrovoljcima
party and
koji
as
su
things
se
stood on the ground.
angažovali
In reality, they were all
da
volunteers
pomognu
who
odbranu
put themselves
srpskog
forward to
naroda
help
tamo
the
gde on
defense
bio
of the Serb
ugrožen. Jel'
people
tako?
where the Serb people were in jeopardy. Is that right?
I tu
Answer,
nema
yes.
nikakvog spora.
Question, so there's no dilemma or dispute there.
Sada,
No, there isn't.
u vezi sa
Question.
vašom tvrdnjom
Now to go back
koju
to
ste
an
izneli na
assertion you
otvorenoj
made
sednici.
in open session
da je srpska
to the
dobrovoljačka
effect
garda
that the
bila pod
Serbian
kontrolom
volunteer
državne
guard was
bezbednosti
under the
Srbije.
control of the state security, the DB of
Da
Serbia.
li ste to rekli?
Did you say that?
Yes.
Answer, yes, I did.
Odnosno, da
Or
je
rather,
državna bezbednost
That the
Srbije
state security of Serbia
upravljala srpskom dobrovoljačkom gardom.
was in charge of the SDG.
Gospodine May,
You know quite
ovde
And you were asked here
od druge strane
by
na
the
koga
side
se to odnosi.
opposite, to
I
whom
odgovorili ste
did he
da
refer?
se odnosi
And you
na
answered
državnu bezbednost
that
i
it
policiju.
referred to the state security
tako?
and the police. Is that right? Answer,
A
yes.
dobro, da li i taj podatak,
Now
iako je
tell
on
me,
mnogo manje važan od ovoga
This
prethodnog,
fact, though it is much
u
less
vezi sa
significant
tom
than the previous
navodnom
one,
kontrolom
regarding this
Srpske
alleged
dobrovoljačke garde od strane
control
državne
by the state
bezbednosti, da li i
security
taj
of the
podatak
Serbian
govori
volunteer
da
guard,
to nije bio
doesn't that fact too
odnos neke
show that
saradnje
this was not a
ili neke,
relationship of
kako bih rekao,
cooperation or I don't know how to put it,
uobičajene, prijateljske,
customary,
konstruktivne
friendly,
veze,
constructive
ako se,
links.
kako vi kažete,
If, as you
taj
say,
izraz koji
that
upotrebljava
expression that
Željko
was
Ražnatović,
used by Željko
smradovi,
Ražnjaković,
odnosi
the expression
na državnu
stinkers,
bezbednost i policiju.
applies to the state security and the police. Answer. Could you ask a specific question,
Pa da li
please?
smatrate da
Question.
kad neko takav izraz upotrebljava, po
When
vašoj
somebody
tvrdnji,
uses an expression of
se
that
odnosi
kind,
na
as you yourself
pripadnike DB-a i
allege,
policije,
and it
da taj
refers to
izraz
members of the
upotrebljava
state
za one s
security
kojima
and the
sarađuje?
police, Would he use such an expression to describe people he collaborates with? Answer.
To je normalno za njega.
It was normal when we are talking
Dakle,
about
on
the
je
late
takvim
commander.
nazivima
I
kvalifikovao
see,
one
so
ljude s
that
kojima
is
on
how
sarađuje.
he described people he was collaborating with.
Dobro.
Answer, yes.
Vrlo dobro.
Very well, fine.
Vi kažete, kada govorite dok smo
You
već na
say,
ovoj 5. strani
Now
vaše
that we are on
izjave,
page 5 of your statement,
da su u Bosnu
that
slati samo dobrovoljci.
only volunteers were
Tako.
sent to Bosnia. Is that right?
Mislite na operaciju
Answer.
95?
Do you
Ja se
mean the
izvinjavam,
operation of
avgust,
1995?
septembar,
September
Da,
and
septembar,
October?
oktobar 95.
Question,
godine,
yes,
vi
September,
govorite kako
October
je 5.000
1995, you
ljudi
say that
uhapšeno,
5,000 men were arrested.
a radilo se, koliko ja
And
razumem,
as
o
far as I
mobilizaciji
understand it, this was
pripadnika
mobilization of
Vojske
members
Republike
of
Srpske
the
krajine.
army of
I oni
Republika
su bili u
Srpska
Republici
Krajina.
Srpskoj krajini,
And they
odnosno u
were in
istočnoj
the
Slavoniji.
Republic of
tako?
Serbian Krajina in eastern Slavonia, isn't that right? Answer. That was not the army of the Republic of Serbian Krajina. Those were refugees, men, refugees who had fled to Serbia
avgusta.
in August after the Operation Storm of
Dobro, je vama-
1995.
Jel mogu, ja se izvinjavam,
Can I
da li mogu da
finish?
završim?
Can I finish my answer?
Yes, of course.
Da bi oni kada bi stigli u Srbiju
When they arrived in
bili
Serbia,
legitimisani na svim mestima. u
they were
kafićima,
asked to
na
show their
ulici.
IDs everywhere, in coffee bars, in the streets, etc., and they would end up in the prison in Sremska Mitrovica, and from there they would be sent to our camp in Erdut. I know that because by mistake a young man from the guards who was from Krajina was also arrested
Javio mi se iz
in this
zatvora
way, and he called me up from
da bi kad
prison.
ja na intervenciju svoju
And upon my intervention, that is, I called up Slađana,
Frankijevu sekretaricu
Frankie's
i on je
secretary,
bio pušten.
and he was released.
A dobro,
Question.
da li je vama poznato
Do
da
you
su
know
vlasti Republike Srpske
That the
krajine
authorities of the Republic of
te
Serbian
ljude koje vi
Krajina,
zovete izbjeglicama
these
smatrali
people that
vojnim
you
dezerterima
consider
i
refugees,
mobilisali
were considered by them
da
to be military deserters.
u istočnoj Slavoniji
And they were mobilized so that in eastern
budu na
Slavonia
svojoj
they
vojnoj
should
obavezi.
fulfill their military duty. Answer. I personally do not consider them deserters because after the Operation Storm in August 1995, those people lost everything. And if you had seen them at the camp in Erdut, you would
Dobro,
share my
ali
opinion.
da li vam se
Question.
čini
Very well, but
ovo kao argument u prilog onome što ja
doesn't this
kažem? Ja
appear
ne
to
kažem
be
šta
an
sam ja
argument in
smatrao,
favor
nego
of
što
what
su
I'm
vlasti
saying?
Republike
I'm not
Srpske
saying what
krajine
I believe, but
smatrale
what the
u vezi s
authorities
tim.
of the Republic of
Vi
Serbia,
kažete
Krajina,
da su
Serbian
u
Krajina
Bosnu
felt
slati
about
samo
it.
dobrovoljci.
You
Znači,
say that only
niko nije
volunteers were
nikoga
sent to
terao da ide u
Bosnia.
Bosnu.
Nobody forced anyone to go
Od
to
njih,
Bosnia.
čak iz
Among
Republike Srpske
them,
krajine.
even those people
Ali
from the Republic
su
of
od njih
Serbian Krajina.
zahtevali
But
da
they were
se pridruže
requested to
snagama Republike
join
Srpske
the
krajine
forces of the
u
Republic
istočnoj
of Serbian
Slavoniji,
Krajina in
Baranji i
eastern
zapadnom
Slavonia,
Sremu,
Baranja
koja
and
je bila
western
deo
Srem,
Republike Srpske krajine.
which
Pa-
was a part of the Republic of Serbian Krajina. Answer. They didn't ask them to do that, they were forced to do
Ja
that.
samo činim razliku između
Question. I'm
ovoga
just
što
making a
ste rekli
distinction between what
i
you
ovoga
said
što ste rekli da su u Bosnu odlazili samo
and
dobrovoljci.
regarding
Je li ta
this,
razlika jasna?
and the other point that you made
A
when
jesu
you
li
said
ti
that
ljudi
only
bili
volunteers went
poreklom
to
iz
Bosnia.
Krajine?
Is that clear? Yes, it is. Question. And
I
were
jesu li
those
bili
people
vojno
originally from
angažovani na
Krajina?
teritoriji
Yes.
Krajine?
And were they militarily engaged in Krajina? Answer. The majority of them, when they arrived, those that I saw at the camp in Erdut, were wearing civilian clothes, so I can't say whether they were militarily engaged when they were being
Dobro.
arrested all over Belgrade. Question. Very well.
Vi ste istražiteljima do sada dali 3 izjave,
Have
tako?
given 3 statements to the investigators. Is that right so far?
Da,
Answer, yes.
Jesu li vas oni pozivali sva 3 puta
Did
ili ste se
they
vi sami javljali
call
njima
you
uvek kad
all
biste se
3
nečeg
times,
setili?
or did you report to them whenever you remembered
Oni su
something?
mene pozivali.
Question, they called me.
Samo bih voljela
I would
da
just like
časni sude da
Your
pitam,
Honors,
znači,
to
da li se
ask
odnosi i na prvo moje pozivanje,
whether
to da li
this
sam se ja sama prijavila
applies to my
ili je
first
neko zvao
contact.
da
Did
se
I report
prijavim,
myself,
da bi
or
znala
did
da
somebody
se
ask me to testify? So I want to be quite clear on that
Ja sam
as
vam
to be able to
precizno
give a
postavio
correct
pitanje,
answer.
jesu li vas oni
My question
pozivali
was
sva
quite
3
clear.
puta
Did
ili
they
ste
call
se vi
you all
njima
3
javljali?
times, or did you report to them? Answer, they called me all 3 times.
A pošto vi ovde
Question,
svedočite,
and since you are
dakle,
testifying
o događajima
about
gotovo
events
pune 4 godine pre nego što ste
covering
počeli da radite,
A period of almost
da
4
li
years before you started
možete da mi
working,
kažete
can you
ko
tell
vam je
me
pomagao
who assisted you
da sve te činjenice
in
tako na izgled precizno izložite za sve te godine kada uopšte niste
presenting
radili
all
tamo?
these facts with such apparent precision when you weren't working for those 4 years? Answer, no one assisted me. I think I was intelligent enough, and if I was working for 2 years, and if I had documents in front of me that I had access to, I can put them in chronological
Dobro,
order
recite mi,
myself in
osim
my
ovoga
mind.
što ste dali
Question,
kao
tell me,
dnevnik,
apart from
jeste li
what
vi
you
priložili
provided
još
as a
kakav dokument?
diary, did you provide any other documents? Answer, documents from the SDG headquarters could not be taken out because in the headquarters, whatever was being done during the day would be destroyed in the evening.
Pa dobro, sad mi kažite,
Question,
ako se
so
sve
tell
što
me
se
now,
radilo u
if
toku
everything
dana
that was
uveče
done over the
uništavalo,
day would
kako
be
to
destroyed
da
in
ste
the
vi
evening, how
imali
then
uvid u
did you
dokumenta
have
4
access
godine
to
pre nego što ste počeli
documents
da radite?
for covering a period of 4 years prior to when you started working? Answer, because some documents relating to combat stayed behind. Documents relating to operations in which the Serbian Volunteer Guard participated. But papers and documents relating to day-to-day obligations, either of the staff or members of the Serbian Volunteer Guard, after the work was done, would
Dobro,
be
da li je vama
destroyed.
onda poznato
Question, very well.
da
Do you know
Srpska
then
dobrovoljačka
that the
garda
Serbian
uopšte
Volunteer
nije
Guard
skrivala
did not
aktivnosti
conceal at
u
all
kojima je
the
učestvovala
activities it participated
odbrani
in
srpskog
defense of
naroda
the
u
Serbian
Krajini
people
i
in
u
Krajina
Bosni i Hercegovini?
and in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Skrivala je.
Answer, it did conceal things like Velika
Doći
Kladuša.
ćemo i na tu veliku
We'll
kladušu.
come to Velika Kladuša too.
A da li je vama poznato
But tell me, are you aware
da kad je Srpska
that
dobrovoljačka
when the
garda
Serbian Volunteer Guard
bila, recimo, u Republici Srpskoj
was,
Krajini,
shall we say, in the
ili
Republic of
konkretnije,
Serbian
u
Krajina, or to be more
delu
specific,
Republike Srpske Krajine
in a
koji
part
se zove
of that republic
Istočna Slavonija, Baranja i
that is
Zapadni
called
Srem.
Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and
Ona
Western
bila
Srem,
pod komandom
that it was under the
Srpske
command
vojske
of
Krajine.
the Serbian Army of
Srpska
Krajina.
vojska Krajine
The
imala svoj
Serbian
štab.
Army of Krajina had its own staff.
Govorite za 91.
Are you talking about
Govorim
1991?
za bilo koje
Question,
vreme.
I'm talking about any
Angažovanja
period
Srpske
of
dobrovoljačke
time
garde
when the Serbian
bilo
Volunteer Guard was
Bosni i
engaged either in
Hercegovini,
Bosnia and
bilo
Herzegovina or in Krajina.
Ne slažem se
Answer,
s vama
I
za
don't agree with
95.
you regarding 1995.
A dobro, da li
Question.
je znači moja tvrdnja
Does that mean
da
that
je
my
Srpska dobrovoljačka garda
assertion
kad
that
god
the
je
Serbian
učestvovala
Volunteer Guard,
u
whenever
pružanju pomoći u
it
borbenim
participated in
operacijama
extending
ili u
aid in
Bosni
combat
ili u
operations either in Bosnia
Krajini,
or in Krajina,
bila pod
was
komandom
under the command
Srpske vojske
of the
Krajine,
Serbian Army of
odnosno Vojske
Krajina,
Republike Srpske,
or of the
policije
Army
Krajine
of
i policije
Republika
Republike
Srpska, or the police of Krajina and the police of the Republic of Srpska. Answer, that may be right in the period from 1991 to 1993, but when the camp was reopened in 1995 in May,
Taj kamp je otvoren
The camp was opened
uz pomoć
with the
državne
assistance
bezbednosti.
of the state security.
A da li je vama poznato
Question. And
da
do
95.
you know
godine,
that in
bez obzira što vi
1995,
sad govorite o kampu koji je
regardless
otvoren,
of what you're saying
kažete da je
about the
otvoren uz
opening of a
pomoć državne
camp
bezbednosti,
and that it was done with the assistance of
ali
the
je vama
state
poznato
security,
da u istočnoj
do you know
Slavoniji,
that in
Baranji i
Eastern
zapadnom
Slavonia,
Sremu
Baranja and
nije
Western
bilo
Srem,
nikakvih borbenih
there were
dejstava,
no
95.
combat operations in 1995. Answer. The camp was opened after the fall of Western Slavonia.
Znači, posle maja
So after
95.
May
do
1995,
27. maja,
or rather during May,
posle operacije
after the operation Flash
u zapadnoj Slavoniji
in Western Slavonia,
i ne možete tek tako negde otvoriti
and you can't
kamp
just
bez
open
nečijeg
a military camp just like that without
Ja ne
somebody's
govorim o
approval.
tome da li je neko otvorio
Question.
na
I'm not
teritoriji
saying
Republike Srpske
whether
Krajine
somebody
kamp
opened
bez
a camp in
odobrenja
the
vlasti
territory of
Republike Srpske
the Republic
Krajine,
of Serbia and
nego
Krajina
pošto govorite
without
o
the
otvaranju
permission
tog
of the
kampa
authorities of that
95.
republic.
godine.
But
Vi
as
govorite o
you're talking
istočnoj
about the
Slavoniji,
opening
jel'
of that camp in 1995, you're talking about
Pitam vas,
Eastern
dakle,
Slavonia,
da li
aren't you? Answer
znate
yes.
da nikakvih
I'm
borbenih
asking you then,
dejstava
are you
95.
aware that there
godine
were
nije
no
bilo u
combat
istočnoj Slavoniji?
operations in 1995 in
Nije
Eastern
bilo,
Slavonia?
ali
Answer,
taj
there were
kamp
not,
je
but
otvoren
that camp was
iz
opened
straha
out of fear
da se događaji
that
zapadne
the
Slavonije
events from
neće
Western
preneti
Slavonia could
na istočnu
spread
Slavoniju.
to Eastern
Dobro,
Slavonia.
da li vas onda dobro razumem?
Very well.
Dakle,
Do I
taj
understand you
kamp je
correctly
otvoren
then?
iz
That camp was
predostrožnosti,
opened
da ne bi
out
došlo
of precaution
do nekog
so as
napada na istočnu
to
Slavoniju, je li tako?
prevent any possible attack on
Vi
Eastern
ste
Slavonia.
pomenuli
Answer, yes.
Vojsku
Question. You mentioned
istočnoj
the
Slavoniji,
army
Baranji i
in
zapadnom
Eastern
Sremu.
Slavonia, Baranja and
i
Western
juče pred kraj
Srem.
dana
And yesterday, towards the
pomenuli
end of
ste
the day,
generala
you
Lončara.
mentioned General Lončar. Answer, yes, I
Vi
did.
ste o njemu govorili
You spoke
kao
about
o
him as
komandantu jedinica
being
vojske
the commander
Jugoslavije
of units
u
of the
istočnoj
Army of
Slavoniji,
Yugoslavia
Baranji
in
i
Eastern
zapadnom
Slavonia,
Sremu.
Baranja and
Je li tako?
Western Srem. Is that
Da,
right?
jer se on tako
Answer,
predstavlja.
yes, because that is how he
Ne
introduced
znam kad
himself.
se vama
Question,
predstavljao,
I don't know
ali da
what
li je
he
vama
said when he
poznato
introduced
da je
himself to
general
you, but do
Lončar
you know that
bio
General Lončar
komandant
was the
snaga
commander of
Srpske
the
vojske
forces of the
Krajine
Serbian Army of
u
Krajina
istočnoj
in
Slavoniji,
Eastern
Baranji i
Slavonia,
zapadnom Sremu?
Baranja and Western Srem.
Da, ali sva
Yes,
njegova dokumenta
but all his
koja su
documents
dolazila iz njegovog
which
štaba,
came
čak i u
from
naš štab u
his
Beogradu,
headquarters, even to our
nosila
headquarters
su
in Belgrade,
vojnu poštu vojske Jugoslavije.
bore the military post of the Army of Yugoslavia. I can even give you the number, VJ9189/9.
U ovom slučaju
The
može da
military
služi
post in this
za
case can be used
komuniciranje,
for communication
nikako
and
za
certainly not
označavanje
for
pripadnosti vojsci
marking
Jugoslavije.
or for
Da li je vama poznato
indicating that somebody was a member of the Army of
da je
Yugoslavia? Do you know that
krajem 95.
towards the end
godine
of 1995
prestao rat na
the
svim
war
prostorima
stopped
u bivšoj
throughout the
Jugoslaviji,
territories of
da
the
je
former Yugoslavia,
zaključen Dejtonski
that the
sporazum?
Dayton Accords were signed?
Da li vam je poznato, dakle,
Do
da
you
je
know that
tada
at that time
potpisan sporazum o ovom prelaznom
the
stanju
agreement was
za
signed
teritoriju
on the transitional
Istočne
state for
Slavonije,
the
Baranje i
territory of
Zapadnog
Eastern
Srema
Slavonia, Baranja and
i da
Western
je taj
Srem,
isti general Lončar
and that same General
komandant
Lončar,
vojske
as the commander
Republike
of the
Srpske
army
Krajine
of the Republic of Serbia
imao
and Krajina,
neposrednu saradnju sa međunarodnom
cooperated
misijom koju je
directly
tada
with an
predvodio
international
William Walker.
mission which
Da li
was
vam je
led
to
at the
poznato?
time by William Walker. Are you aware of that? Answer, no.
Pa da li vam je poznato da je ta
Well,
saradnja
do you know
trajala
that
2
that
godine?
cooperation
I to nije bila
lasted for 2
saradnja.
years?
No.
And it wasn't cooperation which?
Doesn't know about the cooperation.
Dobro, gospodine
All right,
May,
very well, Mr. May.
ja sam želeo da osporim
All I
tvrdnju
wanted
da je
was to
reč
challenge
o
the
formaciji vojske
assertion that
Jugoslavije,
it referred to the
odnosno
formation of the Army
ja
of
sam
Yugoslavia.
siguran
Or
da je
rather, I'm
drugoj
quite
strani
certain that
sasvim
the
dobro
other side over
poznato
there knows
da je
full
reč
well that
o
what all
vojnim
this is
jedinicama
about
Srpske
is
vojske
the
Krajine.
military units of the Serbian Army of Republika Krajina.
You can make your speeches in due course, but just ask the witness questions.
Dobro, recite mi, da li ste
All
odluku
right,
da
tell me
dajete
this.
izjave
Did you
istražiteljima
decide to make statements to
doneli
the
samostalno
investigators on your
ili
own,
ste
independently?
se prethodno s nekim
Or did you
konsultovali,
consult anybody before doing
tražili
so?
neko odobrenje
Did
od
you ask for
nekoga
permission
ili bar
from anyone,
savjet od nekoga,
or at least advice
pošto
from
ja imam
anybody?
utisak da
Because
ste,
I have
s
the
obzirom na
impression,
ono šta ste sve ovdje
in view of the
izjavili,
fact
imali
that
vrlo dobro
you
konsultanta.
stated everything you stated here, that you had a very good consultant. My decision to speak was made by myself. I myself decided to do so.
A dobro, da li ste se s nekim
All right, did you
konsultovali o
consult anybody
sadržini te
as to the
odluke?
contents
Da li ste s nekim
of what you were going
razgovarali
to
da vas bar
say?
podsjeti
Did you
na
talk to
neke
anybody
događaje,
to have them
detalje i
remind
tako
you of
dalje?
certain details
Jer,
and events?
Prilično mi je neverovatno
Because
da
it seems
svedočite
to
o
me
4
rather
godine kad
improbable
niste
for
radili
you to be
samo
able
na
to
osnovu
testify about
sećanja iz
4
onoga što
years
vam
when
neko
you didn't
govori.
work on the basis of your recollections
I
or on
to
the basis
tih
of what
godina.
people said, and in those particular years.
Moram vam reći da
Answer, I have to
da
tell you
ste i vi tamo radili neke
that
sećanja
you over
koja
there,
sam urezala za čitav život.
had you worked over there, you would have remembered things your entire life, because to bury 12 young men who were fighting for the Serbian people is a very difficult thing.
Moj razlog što sam želela da
And
progovorim
that
ono
is
što ja
why
znam,
I wanted to say
na
what I
kraju
know,
ispalo
because
da taj rat
it would
se
appear
sveo
that the
šverc
war
i da su ti mladići
boiled down to smuggling, and that those young men
znači,
had died for no reason
A
whatsoever.
ko je se bavio švercom tamo?
Question, who was it who engaged in smuggling
ko se
over
bavi
there?
švercom?
Vi kažete da se radi o
Answer,
švercu.
you want to know who engaged in smuggling? We want to
Svakako
say
je
that
bilo
the
tih
war
ratnih
was actually
profitera.
smuggling,
Ko se
and
bavio
you're very
švercom?
well
Srpska
aware of that.
dobrovoljačka garda bavila
Certainly
švercom.
there were war profiteers, but do you want to say that the SDG engaged in
nešto na
smuggling?
osnovu čega,
Answer, yes. Question,
o
all
čemu
right, very
svedočite na
well.
osnovu
That's
vašeg
something that you're
saznanja.
testifying about on the basis of your knowledge, is that right?
Kako mislite na osnovu mojih saznanja?
How do you mean on the
Na
basis of
osnovu
my
vaših
knowledge?
saznanja da se
Question on the
ta
basis of your knowledge and information,
institucija,
that the
dakle,
institution,
Stranka srpskog jedinstva,
that
vi ste
particular
radili
institution,
formalno
the
u Stranci srpskog
SDG,
jedinstva,
because
tako?
officially you were working in the SDG, were you not?
Stranke srpskog jedinstva i
I'm
štab
sorry, the
Srpske
Party of Serbian
dobrovoljačke
Unity.
garde se nalazio na istom
The
mestu.
Party of Serbian Unity headquarters and the SGG headquarters were in the same building. The difference was that when there were operations, Borislav Pejovic
Odnosno bio je
was
znači predsjednik stranke,
the president of the party,
pokojni komandant,
and the late
znači
commander
komandant Srpske dobrovoljačke
was the
garde,
commander
bio
of the
počasni
SDG,
predsjednik
and he was
stranke
honorary
Srpske
president of the Serbian Unity Party.
Dobro, ali u svakom
Question,
slučaju
all
glavna
right, but
ličnost
at any
Stranke
rate,
srpskog
he was the main personage in the Serbian Unity Party.
jedinstva.
Answer, who do you
Željka
mean?
Ražnatović.
Question, well, I mean Željko Ražnatović. Answer, yes.
Pomenuli ste
Question.
Pelević.
You mentioned Pelević.
Pelević je profesor. je tako?
Pelević is a professor, isn't he?
Ne bih mogla da
Answer,
kažem,
well, I can't really
kad sam ja
say.
prestala da radim, on nije bio profesor.
When I stopped working, he wasn't a
Dobro,
professor
pošto njega
at that time.
pominjete u vezi
Question,
sa
all right, but as you
vojnim
mention him in
aktivnostima,
connection with the military
iz podataka
activities,
koje ja imam,
from the information I have,
on je isključivo se bavio političkim radom Stranke
he
srpske jedinstva
dealt
i
with
nije
the
se bavio
political
nikakvim
aspects of
borbenim
the Party of
aktivnostima. Je li to
Serbian
tačno
Unity.
ili
He
nije?
never engaged in any combat military operations. Is that true? Answer, yes. But during the Banja Luka operation,
Boravio je
he
3-4
did spend time, 3 or 4 days in fact, in Banja Luka.
Po povratku
And
se
upon his
vratio,
return,
rekao
when he
nam je
came back, he told us
da je zajedno sa
that
pokojnim komandantom,
together with the late commander
generalom
and
Talicem,
also with General
učestvovao,
Talic,
odnosno,
he took part,
kako je on rekao,
or
branio
rather, he
zajedno
said
sa
he
Banja
defended Banja Luka together
Dobro,
with them,
da
as
li
he
vam je
put it.
poznato
Question,
da je
all right,
Banja
and do you know
Luka
that Banja
bila
Luka
na teritoriji
was on the
Republike
territory
Srpske i
of
da je,
Republika
hvala Bogu, i
Srpska,
danas na
and that,
teritoriji
thank
Republike
God,
Srpske.
it is still in the territory of
da li
Republika
je vama
Srpska? Answer, yes, I
poznato
do know that.
da
Question,
je
do you know
Prijedor
that Prijedor
veoma blizu Banja Luke?
itself is very close to Banja Luka?
Poznato mi je,
Answer,
ali
yes, I do know that.
ti tako poznato
But I also
činjenica
know
da je Banja Luka
that Banja Luka
95.
in 1995
bila na ivici
was on the brink of falling into enemy
Pa
hands.
dobro, da li je
Question.
onda vama
All right
jasno
then, is it clear to you
da
then
to što su oni branili
that the fact
Prijedor,
that they were
Banja
defending
Luku, da je to
Prijedor
bila
and Banja Luka,
defanzivna
that that was a
akcija,
defensive
odnosno da su
operation, or
branili te
rather that they
gradove
were defending those
od
towns
ofanzive
from
koju
the
su vodile
offensive that was being
hrvatske i
launched by the
muslimanske
Croatian and
snage
Muslim
prema tom
forces
delu teritorije Republike
in that
Srpske.
part of the territory of the Republika Srpska?
Da.
Answer yes.
Prema tome to nije bila
Question.
nikakva
So,
ofanzivna
it
akcija,
was
nego
no
odbrana
offensive.
Prijedora
It
i Banja
was
Luke. Jel vam
the
to
defense
poznato?
of Prijedor and Banja Luka. Are you aware of that? Answer yes, I am.
A u čemu tu vidite
Question,
nešto
where do you see
što
then in all that
ne biste
something
smatrali
that
ispravnim?
you don't consider to be in order and proper?
Ja,
Answer.
moje svedočenje nije tome da
My
ja
testimony
smatram nešto
was not as to whether I
ispravnim
considered
ili
something to be
neispravnim.
proper or
Ja samo
improper.
govorim o
All I was doing was
činjenicama ili nekim
presenting
mojim
some
saznanjima.
facts
Znači, ja
or
nisam ovdje
my
došla
knowledge
da
about
svedočim
them.
da
So I
bih
haven't
govorila
come here
šta je
to
korektno,
testify
šta
to
nije.
say what is proper and improper
Dobro,
or correct
to je
conduct or
ispravno.
not. Question,
Pomenuli
well,
ste
that's
generala
okay, yes.
Talića. General
Now, you
Talić
mentioned
je
General
bio
Talić, and
komandant
General Talić
korpusa
was the commander
Vojske
of the
Republike
Corps of the
Srpske,
Army of
upravo
Republika
sa sedištem u
Srpska,
Banja Luci, jel tako?
precisely with its headquarters in Banja
Dakle,
Luka.
oni
That's
su
right, isn't it? Answer
pomogli
yes.
Talićevim
Question, so they
snagama.
helped
Praktično
Talić's
se uključili u
forces, and they
Talićeve snage,
actually
jel tako?
became part of Talić's
A da li
forces, troops.
pretpostavljate da
Answer
su
yes.
u toj operaciji,
Question, well,
na
in that
primjer,
particular
morali biti
operation,
u
don't you
sastavu
assume then that
vojske
they had to be
Republike
within the
Srpske?
composition of the Army of Republika Srpska?
Garda
Answer, the Guard
nije bila oni su zajedno učestvovali na tom
took
području,
part in the
ali
area
nije bila
together,
u sastavu
but it wasn't
vojske
in the
Republike
composition of the
Srpske.
Army of Republika Srpska.
Garda je
The
trebala,
Guard,
znači njen zadatak je
that is
bio
to say, the task of the Guard
maltene
was,
da zadržava položaje
to all
sa
intents and
kojih je, da
purposes,
kažem,
to keep the positions
pobegla vojska
from which the
Republike
Army of Republika Srpska had fled, to
U
maintain those
svakom
positions.
slučaju bili su u
Question,
funkciji,
at any rate,
odbrane
They were there to
teritorije Republike
defend the territory of Republika
nije
Srpska,
sporno.
right? Answer, right. You're not challenging that. Answer, no, I'm not.
Srpske. A dobro, samo da
Question.
pređemo,
All right, let's
pošto
move on,
idemo na razna pitanja.
because we've been discussing different areas.
Vi kažete da su vam ponudili
You
kasnije
say
da
that
budete
later
primljeni
on
u jedinicu
they
za specijalne operacije DB-a.
made you the
tako?
proposal of becoming a member of the special DB unit. Is that right? Answer,
I
yes.
popunili ste formulare.
Question, and you filled out some forms as far as I understood. Answer, yes.
Pa iz ovoga što sam
Question,
ja pročitao
and
iz
from what
vaše
I've
izjave,
read from your statement,
niste primljeni zbog mržnje prema meni.
you were not admitted because of your hatred towards me. Answer, not because of hatred. I do not feel any hatred towards anyone.
nisam primljena
I was
zato
not
što nisam
taken on
delila
because I
političko
didn't share the
mišljenje
political views
tadašnjeg,
of the then,
znači, političkog
that is to
vrha,
say,
a
the
samim tim
political leadership.
očigledno je
And
takva
quite
klima
obviously, the
vladala
climate
u državnoj
that
bezbednosti
prevailed was
Srbije.
such
Ali dobro,
in
ali
the
vi
DB
mene
that you had to
pominjete po
agree.
imenici.
Question, yes, but you mentioned
Ne
my
govorite o
name.
političkom
You
vrhu,
don't
o
talk about the
političkoj
political
klimi,
leadership and the
nego
political
kažete
climate and things of
Slobodan
that sort.
Milošević.
You say
Pa
Slobodan
je bilo neko
Milošević.
pitanje, jel volite ili ne
So
volite
was there a
Slobodana
question in the
Miloševića,
form
možete
which
mu
said,
upitati.
do you like or dislike Slobodan Milošević? Answer, no, but it did ask what I thought about the
O
party.
socijalističkoj partiji.
Da.
You mean the
Jesu
Socialist
vas
Party?
pitali još za neku partiju?
Answer, yes.
sam
Well, were you asked about any other party?
Samo
What you
znači
thought about the
Socijalističku
other party? Answer, no. So they
juče
just
ste
asked you about the
izjavili
Socialist Party.
da niste
Yes, that's
primljeni
right.
zato
But
što ste
yesterday
bili
you said
učesnik
that they didn't
demonstracije
take you on
91.
because you had taken part in the 1991-92 demonstrations. Answer, yes, that was the second time they called me up and told me
Da nisam politički
that
podobna,
I was
jer sam bila
undesirable
učesnik
politically because I had been a
demonstracije
participant in the
91.,
demonstrations in 1991 and 1992.
Pošto prvo vas pozovu na razgovor,
What they do is they first invite you for an interview, you fill out a form, then a month or two goes by, they check out all the information you have entered into the
Mislite
form.
vi?
da je
That's the
govorimo-
procedure. I'm speaking in general terms.
Da.
I nakon toga mi je
And
rečeno
after
da
that,
sam bila
I was
učesnik
told
91.
that I was a participant in the events of 1991 and
Kako vam je onda
1992.
palo na pamet
Question,
u izjavi
well, how
da
did you
pominjete
get the
moje
idea
ime
of
i
mentioning
vezu
my
s tim
name in your statement
vašim
and linking me
neprijemom?
up to the fact that you were not admitted, not taken on?
Osumnjičen je
Answer.
bio predsjednik.
The accused was the president of the Socialist Party of Serbia at the
I ja
time,
sam tada rekla
and
da
I said,
posle mog rada
after my work
u Srpskoj dobrovoljačkoj
in
gardi
the
i u
Serbian
stranci
Volunteer
Srpskog
Guard
jedinstva,
and
mi se
the
prvenstveno
Party of
na
Serbian
rad u
Unity,
SDG-u.
but
Ne
first of all my
slažem se
work
s
in the SDG,
politikom
I said that I did not agree with the politics and policy of your party
vašu politiku.
and your own policies.
Ali koliko sad shvatam
Question, but
iz
as far as I am able to understand you
ovoga što
now,
objašnjavate, vi
from
mene
your
tada niste
explanations, you didn't mention me specifically at the time.
U mom svedočenju
Answer
pominjali.
where?
Ne,
In my
nego
testimony
u
or what?
tom
Question,
intervjuu
no,
koji
in the
ste imali za
interview that you
prijem
had when you
Ujedinjenih.
applied
Ja sam samo
for the
tada
unit.
rekla da se ne slažem
Answer, I
s
just said at the
politikom
time that I did not
SPS-a,
agree with the
s vašom
SPS
politikom.
policies and with your own policies and politics.
I smatrate da zbog toga
Question.
niste primljeni.
And you think that that was
A ne
the
zbog
reason
onoga
for
što
which
ste
you were
jučer rekli da ste
refused?
učestvovali u
Answer,
demonstraciji.
yes. And not because of what you said yesterday for taking part in the demonstrations. Answer, for both reasons. Because of one and the other. Question, all right, fine.
A recite mi, kako ste vi uopšte dobili priliku da počnete da radite
Tell me,
za stranku
how did you
Srpskog
come
jedinstva?
to work for the Party of Serbian Unity? The first time? The first time? Yes, the first time. Answer. Well, the first time they needed people to work for them at their headquarters. It was located in Savska Street, number 7 or number 9, close to or rather opposite the railway station in Belgrade. And an ad appeared, and I responded, and I began working there. And I also became a member. I'll tell you that straight away. I also became a member of the party because they preferred having members work for them rather than
Dakle, vi ste se
non-members.
u
Question.
članstvo
So
stranke
you
Srpskog
became
jedinstva
a member of the
uključeni
Party of
isključivo da
Serbian
biste bili
Unity
primljeni na posao.
exclusively in order to get a
A
job
niste
there.
delili
Answer
njihove
right.
političke stavove. Dakle,
Question,
kao
but you
njihov
didn't
član.
share their political opinions, did you? Answer, I didn't think about their political positions at all at that time.
A dobro,
Question.
pretpostavljam da je posao koji ste
All right, but
tada
I assume
trebalo
that
da
the
obavljate
work you were supposed to
morao
do
da bude od
there
velikog poverenja,
then was confidential in
s
many
obzirom na veliki
respects.
broj kontakta
In
i
view of the large
pristup
number of contacts
evo
and
toj
your access
dokumentaciji
to
o kojoj vi
documents and so on and so
govorite,
forth, the
brojnoj i
documents
različitoj.
that you're talking about, and there were many of those. Answer, let me correct you. When I was taken on board, all that existed was the Party of Serbian Unity at that time, because the Serbian Volunteer Guard at that point in time only had a camp open in Erdut. The headquarters were separate, so it didn't matter who worked there. And my job was to draw up the cards. So you didn't need anybody confidential,
A vi ste
trustworthy for that, in that
ovde
respect.
pokazali u
Question.
jednom od dokaznih predmeta,
Well, in one of the exhibits that were shown
mada
here,
vidim da ste priložili ceo ovaj vaš dnevnik,
and I see that you have
pečat sa
attached your entire
faksimilom Željka
diary,
Ražnjatovića.
you have a stamp with the facsimile of Željko Ražnjatović Arkan's signature.
Jeste
Is
vi
that right?
raspolagali
Answer
tim
yes.
pečatom?
Did you have that stamp available to you? Answer yes. In 1995 at
Dobro,
the
znači,
SDG
ovaj
headquarters, I
pečat,
did have the use of that
sa
stamp. It was
njegovim
available to be.
Potpisom
Question, all right. So the stamp
je
with his
služio
signature
da budu overena razna dokumenta
was
u
used to
njegovo ime i
authorize
da
and
se to
certify
smatra
certain
potpisanim od
documents
njega.
in
tako?
his own name so that they should be considered as
Da li
having
to
been
onda
signed by
znači da ste vi
him?
ipak
Answer
bili
yes.
osoba od
Question, well, doesn't that
najvećeg
mean that you
poverenja,
were
ako vam neko
somebody
poveri
of the
da
greatest
stavljate njegov potpis na dokumenta,
credentials and
koja idu iz
confidentiality if
stranke
you were
Srpskog
allowed
jedinstva
to
ili
place the
Srpskog
stamp with
dobrovoljačkog
his signature on documents coming out of the party or the SDG? Answer,
Što se tiču Srpske
only documents in the course of 1995 coming out from the SDG.
Dobro, ali ako vam neko da
Question. All right, but if somebody
taj
gives
pečat
you the
koji vi
use
možete
of
da
a stamp,
upotrebite za
which
bilo
you can
kakav
then use
dokument,
for any
ali se
document
može
whatsoever,
pretpostaviti da ste bili osoba od najvećeg
I think we
poverenja.
can assume that you were
Jer vi
somebody
ste svakako,
who
budući u
was
posjedu tog
very
pečata, mogli da
confidential
ga stavite na bilo šta,
and trusting,
ako biste želeli da
because
zloupotrebite.
if you wanted to
Osoba koja
abuse
vam
it,
je
you
to
could put it
dala,
down on any
verovala je da to vi
document.
nećete učiniti.
And
jel'
if
tako?
you were entrusted
Znači,
with
imala
the
maksimalno
stamp,
poverenje u vas.
that means that they had maximum confidence in you and that they thought you wouldn't misuse that highly placed trust. Is that right? Answer
Your
yes.
Honour, I don't know if the witness wants to give any consideration to the degree to which she's giving more detail now about the use of the stamp and the issue that arose earlier. It's a matter for her, of course.
Yes, the witness will have heard that. Yes, Mr. Marcevich, keep going.
Nemam bojazni. Nastavim. Možemo se.
We can keep going. It's fine.
Dobro, da se sad ne bi vraćali ponovo
All right,
na
not to have to go back
zatvorenu sednicu,
into
imajući
private
u vidu
session again,
činjenice koje ste naveli,
and
koje
bearing in
sam vam
mind the facts
citirao
that you
na
presented
zatvorenoj
and the ones
sednici,
that I quoted to you in
i
private
razloge
session,
i
and
konsekvence
the
koje su iz
reasons
toga
and
proistekle.
consequences that emanated from that,
Kako je onda moguće da
how is it then possible
takva osoba od najvećeg poverenja bude
a highly trusted individual as yourself of that kind,
kako bih rekao, kvalifikovana
how shall I put this?
kao
How
nekakav
can they be qualified as
neprijateljski
or
element,
termed as a
rekao bih u
hostile
tim.
element, if
u
I can
toj
put
grupi.
it that way, in that group of people?
Ja
Answer.
nikad nisam bila neprijateljski
I was
element
never a
u
hostile
grupi,
element in the group.
nego sam ja samo svoj posao
All I
krajnje
did
ozbiljno
was do
shvatila.
my job
Moje
seriously.
je bilo samo da radim.
It was just up to me to work, and I always took my job seriously, and that's what I did. I did my job properly, and I think that that's why they, or rather the
Dobro,
commander,
gospodine
had
May,
placed
pošto
a great deal
ovo
of trust in me.
insistirate da je na zatvoreno,
Question,
ja
all
bih
right, Mr. May, as you
citirao-
insist that this be in private session, I should like to
citirao
quote.
jedan pola
We're not,
minuta
we
sam.
are in open session. Are you going to go into private session? Is this something which should be dealt with?
Samo da postavim preciznije pitanje
I just want to
svedokinji, jer ste
ask the witness a
zabranili
more
da se to
precise
pominje.
question, because
Very well.
you
Into
said that it
private
shouldn't be
session.
mentioned in open session.
Very well. Into private session.
Pa mislim da je, evo, dovoljno.
I think
da
that
ne- da ne
will
uzimamo
be
mnogo
sufficient
vremena.
so that we don't use up too much
Tako
time,
dalje.
etc., etc.
Na raznim stranicama
On
se vidi da
various
treba nekog da
pages,
probudite u neko vreme, da
One
treba
can
neko,
see that you
jel ovo
need
vi
to wake
nazivate
up someone
dnevnikom.
at a certain time or things like that. Do you call this a diary? Yes, it is a diary
Znači,
of
ovo
my
što je
daily
na
duties.
ovim
So,
Jedan
Na
what
jednoj
it
strani
was
je vaša
shown on
dužnost
one
jednog dana.
page
Tako.
is your duty for that day. Is that right? An answer, no.
Imali smo dve knjige.
We had two
Jer kako su
books,
dve sveske,
two
jedna
notebooks.
sveska je
One
uvek bila ispred nas u
was
štabu.
always in front of us at headquarters. It was a notebook for the duty person who would write down everything. And then the next morning, the page would be torn out from the previous day.
Dve sveske su
And this other diary, and I have provided two notebooks. These referred to me personally, things that I myself needed to do. And I took note of those things in a separate notebook so as not to forget. Because most things everyone in the staff would be doing, but as there were many events during the day, and if they couldn't
Dobro, znači
do
ovo je
it,
neka
I
vrsta
had to note it
rokovnika
down
i
and do
vašeg
it. So this is a
podsjetnika šta
kind
da
of
radite u toku
agenda
dana.
and a reminder for you as to what you needed to do
Okrenite
during
još
that
neku
day.
stranicu,
Yes.
samo molim vas.
Will you please turn another page or so?
Sastanak i tako
A
dalje.
meeting, etc.
Šile, pop.
Chile pop.
Sijalice,
Light bulbs.
broj nekog telefona.
Then a telephone.
Ja imam jednu stranicu ovdje
have a
koja vam je
page
data
here.
kao
Which was
izvađena iz dnevnika kao dokazni predmet.
apparently torn out of the agenda
Verovatno
as
su
an
smatrali da je
exhibit.
to jako nešto
They probably
važno.
thought this to be something very
To
important.
je
It is
tabulator 8.
tab 8.
Ne znam da li vi možete da
I
nađete
don't know whether
stranu
you can find
dnevnika.
that page in the diary.
Završava se sa
It
11:40.
ends with 11:40.
Let the witness
To je
have
tabulator 8.
It's tab 8.
tab 8.
Data je ovdje kao nekakav dokazni predmet.
It's given here some sort of an exhibit.
To je ova gdje piše pištolji.
This is the one that says pistols.
It's tab 9, according to my record. I may be wrong. Tab 9, and if that could go on the elbow.
Yes,
Nije
please.
to ta.
No, not
Ovo
that
nema
one.
veze, opet ne mogu da
Again,
poslati nešto
I
beli.
can't understand what this is all about.
Evo ja ovdje
Send
imam, gospodine
someone
May, u
something to someone.
tabulatoru.
Look,
I
let's-
have it here, Mr. May.
Oh. What are we
Da,
talking about?
to.
Start again. Start again, Mr. Milosevic. What is it you want on what is the entry you want on the Elmo? What does it say? Can find it.
Evo, to je ovdje dato kao dokazni
It's given
predmet.
here as
Pa
an
ja
exhibit.
pitam,
Oh, just tell us what it says. And then we can, it's no whether it's an exhibit or not.
Your Honours, it's tab
meni
9.
loše.
In
We've been
my
dealing
batch,
with
it's
that.
8.
Is this what you want, Mr. Milosevic? At 8:30, Erdut pistols. Is that what you
da,
want?
da.
Yes, yes, yes.
Put it on the Elmo, please. Is that it? Very well. Want to know about this?
A dobro, recite mi,
Tell me,
pošto je to uzeto kao dokazni
Since
predmet,
this has
šta
been
se ovim dokazuje?
exhibited. What does this prove, please?
Ovako, tog dana je
Let
bila
me see.
proslavna
On that
Svete
day,
Nikole
that
u
day
štabu
was St. Nicholas Day, and it was being celebrated at the headquarters in Erdut. The commander had prepared pistols for the officers and men who had merits for the Serbian Volunteer Guard, and each of those pistols had an inscription on it.
Dobro, prema tome, ovdje je reč o
Very
poklonu.
well. So we're talking about gifts, are we?
Pa kod nas
Yes,
Srba se
gifts
često
as
kao
pistols.
poklon daje pištolj
Question, among us
muškarcima.
Serbs, it is quite frequent to give a pistol as a gift, especially to men. Yes, but each of those pistols had a document attached containing a license, a permit
Vojna
from the
pošta u
military
Erdutu
post in
je
Erdut.
normalno mogla da izda
Question, the military
dozvole
post in Erdut could
pripadnicima
normally
jedinica u njenom
issue
sastavu.
permits to
Oni su
members
bili u
of the
Erdutu, a
units
tamo je
belonging
bila
to it
nadležna
because
vojska
they were in
Republike Srpske
Erdut
Krajine.
and that was within the competence of the army of
Pa
the
recite
Republic
mi,
of Serbia and
a-
Krajina. Yes, but allow me to
izvolite.
finish. Yes, please do.
Ti pištolji
But
su
those
trebali
pistols
da budu predati tamo,
just needed to
znači
be
da budu
presented
svečano
over
uručeni.
there at a formal
I nakon
ceremony,
toga su se svi oni
upon
vratili
which
sa
all of
tim
them
pištoljima,
returned
nosili
with
u
those
Beogradu,
pistols and wore them in
znači
Belgrade
sa dozvolom vojne pošte
with
iz
the
Erduta.
permit issued by the military post
je
in
neki
Erdut.
problem što
Question.
su vlasti u Srbiji
Is it a
priznavale
problem that the
dokumenta
authorities in Serbia recognize the documents
vlasti Republike
of the
Srpske
authorities of the Republic of Serbia and Krajina?
Ja govorim samo činjenice.
Answer,
ne znam
I'm
da li je
just
problem ili ne.
speaking of
Pa vi
facts.
ste,
I don't know whether
pitao
that
vas
is
je
a problem or
gospodin
not.
Najs, da
Question,
li
but
su mogle
Mr.
vukovarske
Nice
tablice
asked you,
da
could
se voze po
Vukovar
Beogradu,
license plates
pa
be
tablice iz
used in
svih
Belgrade?
mogućih.
The license
Je li vam
plates of
poznato-
No,
all
I'm going to-
over the place were used.
I'm going to stop you. If you're going on to ask about license plates, it's another topic. Now, have you finished with the diary or not? If so, can the usher remove it and we can go on with the rest of the evidence? Have you finished with the diary or do you want to ask anything else?
Još, evo, recite mi, pošto se vidi dole
Tell me, as we
i broj telefona, čak i ako je precrtan, može se pročitati, je li on u vezi s tim pištoljima?
Ne, ne.
Pa šta vam je taj broj telefona?
Pa ne znam. Mislim, tad sam pozvala i precrtala neko.
The
what does that
interpretation is gone.
telephone number mean that can be seen on that same page? The interpreter apologizes, the microphone wasn't switched on.
Pitao sam vas šta
I
vam
was
je,
asking
nisu
you-
prevodioci mogli da čuju,
The interpreters couldn't hear me.
šta znači ovaj broj telefona?
What does this telephone number mean on
Ne
the
mogu
same
se
page?
setiti.
Answer, I cannot remember.
Ne možete se setite.
You can't remember?
Pa evo,
Answer, no.
moji saradnici su proverili,
My
to je
associates
broj
have
telefona
checked.
u
It is the
restoranu na
telephone
stadionu
number
Crvene zvezde.
in a restaurant at the Red Star Stadium. Answer, possibly.
Pa
I
je
don't
vaša
remember.
zgrada preko puta
But
stadiona
is
Crvene
your
zvezde?
building across the street from the Red Star
Izvali
Stadium?
ste
Answer,
nekoga
yes.
tamo
And you called up
restoran
somebody in the
stadionu
restaurant
Crvene
there at the stadium. Answer, possibly.
A molim vas,
Please.
dobro, da ne idemo više po
Very
tom,
well, let
po
us
tom
not,
dnevniku, dakle to smo ustanovili, to
dwell on
nije
that
dnevnik,
diary
nego
anymore. I
podsjetnik.
think we've established that it
Vaš
is not a
podsjetnik.
diary, but a simple reminder of your own.
Let the diary go back to the accused.
Yes, thank you. Pitao vas je gospodin Najs
Mr. Nice
da li je
asked
Srpska
you
dobrovoljačka
whether the
garda se
Serbian
zvala i
volunteer
Srpska
guard
nacionalna
was
garda, vi ste
also known as
odgovorili
the
ne.
Serbian National Guard, and you said
A
no.
znate da se
Answer,
ova
no.
Mauzerova garda
Question,
u
and do you know
Bosni
that
zvala Srpska
Mauser's
nacionalna garda?
guards in Bosnia call themselves the Serbian National Guards? Answer, no.
Mi smo ih zvali Panteri.
We call them the Panthers.
Dobro, to ste
Very
verovatno
well.
kasnije ih zvali tako,
You probably called them that later on,
kad im je stradao komandant. koji
when
se
the
zvao
commander was killed, whose name was
Pantelić.
Pantelić.
Sad molim vas da mi odgovorite na
But
neka
will
pitanja
you
koja se
please
tiču
now answer
ovih
a few questions having to do with
presretnutih telefonskih
these
razgovora.
intercepted telephone
Međutim, ja
conversations?
bih hteo da čujem prethodno
But I
gospodine
would
May,
like
odakle
to hear
ovi,
first,
može li-
Mr. May,
možemo li
what is
dobijemo
the source of those
podatak o
intercepts?
poreklu-
Can we be told the source
o poreklu ovih transkripata?
of those transcripts?
Yes,
I'm not in a position to give the source at the moment, not least because the computer system is down and my ability to retrieve information of that kind is not immediately available to me. If there's no other impediment in providing the information, I can do it after the break. Oh, well, I hope I can. It, again, may be dependent on computer access.
very well.
Dobro, onda ćemo da
Very well.
preskočimo to,
Then
pa samo
we
da
leave
idemo na
that
transkripte.
area, that matter
da
out,
idemo na
and
transkripte
we'll
ovih
move on to the
razgovora.
transcripts of those
Vi ste,
intercepted
pre nego
conversations.
što vam je dat
Before
transkript
you
ovih
were
razgovora,
given the transcripts of these
bili pitani
conversations, you were asked
od druge strane,
by the side opposite
kako je Arkan došao u Bijeljinu.
how Arkan
Sjećate se
arrived in
toga?
Bijeljina. You remember that? Answer, yes, yes.
I vaš odgovor je bio da je
Question,
došao
and
na
your
poziv
answer
Biljane
was
Plavšić.
that he came there upon the invitation of Biljana Plavšić. Yes, because he himself repeated that
Dobro.
several times at
A
headquarters.
ovaj transkript se odnosi
Very well.
na
Now, this
vreme
transcript
prilično posle toga, jedno 20-ak dana, tako,
was rather
ovoga u
later,
Bijeljini.
some 20 days after these
Kad
things
Biljana
in
Plavšić
Bijeljina,
zove
when Biljana
njega i
Plavšić
razgovara
called
sa
him
ovim
up and spoke to this
Rusom, ili tako?
Rus.
Da.
Rus, yes, I see.
Dakle,
So,
po mojim informacijama, ne
according to
samo
my
Biljane Plavšić, nego i
information, it
lokalno
was not just
rukovodstvo i upravo
Biljana
tog istog
Plavšić,
Mauzera
but the
koji je
local
imao,
leadership and this same Mauser,
koji je bio komandant
who
Srpske
was the
nacionalne
commander
garde,
of the Serbian National
koji je inače
Guard,
čovek iz Bijeljina.
and who is
To vam je
also
poznato.
from Bijeljina, you know that.
Ali
Answer,
komandant
yes,
uvek
but the
govorio
commander
s
always
ponosom
spoke with
da ga je Biljana
pride
Plavšić pozvala da
of the
se
fact
bori
that
tamo.
Biljana Plavšić had
Dobro,
called him
govorio
to
je s
fight there.
ponosom da ga je Biljana Plavšić
I
pozvala da se bori
see.
tamo.
He spoke with pride of the
Pa
fact
dobro,
that Biljana
jel ga
Plavšić
onda
had called him
poslala
to
Srpska
fight there.
državna bezbednost ili je
Well,
on otišao na
then, was
poziv
he
Biljane
sent
Plavšić?
there by the Serbian state security or upon the invitation of Biljana Plavšić?
Govorite za Bijeljinu.
Are you talking
Jeste,
about
govorim za
Bijeljina?
Bijeljinu.
Yes, I'm talking about
Ona
Bijeljina.
ga je poslala.
Answer,
Ona ga je
she
poslala.
invited him, yes.
Dakle, nije ga poslala
So
Srpska
it
državna
wasn't the
bezbednost u Bijeljinu.
Serbian state security that sent him there. Answer, I was only speaking about the Serbian state security during the
Dobro.
period that I was employed at the
Samo vi ste
headquarters.
generalno rekli,
Yes, that's
vi
fine,
ste
but you
generalno
said
rekli u svojoj
in
izjavi,
general terms in your statement,
citiram vas,
and I quote from
šestoj
your
strani vaše
statement
prve
on
izjave.
page 6 of your first statement,
Arkan nije pao s neba, njegove
Arkan
jedinice
did not
nikad ne
fall
bi
from
mogle
the
da
sky.
deluju onako
His
kako su
units would
delovale
never
da
have
nisu
been
bile
able to act in
integralni
the way
deo
they did
državne
had they not
bezbednosti
been
Srbije.
an integral part of the
Da.
state
A
security
na
of
drugoj
Serbia.
strani vaše
Yes,
druge
and
izjave
on
u
the
8.
second page of
pasusu
your second statement in
govoreći o Arkanu
paragraph
kažete
8, speaking about
Arkan
Arkan,
je uvek imao
you
dobre
say
odnose sa
Arkan was
DB-om,
always
čak
on
i pre
good
rata
terms
on je
with
bio
the
agent koji
DB.
je radio
Even
za
before
DB
the
izvan
war,
Jugoslavije.
he was an
Sve ste
agent
to
working
izjavili,
for
jel
the
tako?
DB outside the borders of
Prema
Yugoslavia.
tome,
You said all that, didn't you?
ovo što
Answer,
sad
yes, I did.
kažete
So
je
what you're
nešto
saying
drugo.
now is something
Ovo
else.
što nam sad citirao,
What I
odnosi se, kažete,
quoted,
na vreme od
you were
94.
saying, you are
A
saying
ovo za
related to the period
Bijeljinu,
after 94.
To kažete
As
kako vam je s
for
ponosom govorio da ga je
Bijeljina,
pozvala
you
Biljana
say
Plavšić.
that
I
he
don't
told
know.
you with pride that he was invited by Biljana Plavšić.
It's quite impossible to follow that question. Can you put it clearly, what it is you want to say?
Nemoguće je pratiti vaše pitanje. Možete li jasno reći što želite mi?
Dakle, samo hoću da
All I
razjasnimo
want
ovo
is
po vašim
to clear this
saznanjima.
up
Dakle, ja
according to
ne
your
želim
own
da vi
knowledge,
kažete
and
bilo
I
šta što
don't
nije
want
vaše
you to say
saznanje.
anything that is not
U Bijeljinu
part of
je
your own
otišao na
knowledge.
poziv
That he
Biljane
went to
Plavšić,
Bijeljina
a
at the
ne
invitation of
tako što ga je
Biljana
neko
Plavšić,
poslao iz
and
DB
not
Srbije.
by
Jel
being
tako?
sent there by anybody from
On
the
je
DB of
govorio
Serbia.
da ga je pozvala
Answer.
Biljana
He said
Plavšić
that he had
lično.
been invited by Biljana
pogledajte ovaj
Plavšić
transkript.
herself. Very well. Now look at this transcript, please.
Razgovora
Of
23.
the
aprila
conversation of the
1992. godine koji smo
23rd
juče
of
slušali.
April 1992 that we listened to yesterday.
Tab
Kaže,
5.
And it says,
još nisam do kuće stigla,
I still haven't reached
jedna
home.
mala relacija je blokirana,
A small section is
ali
blocked,
sam htjela,
but I wanted,
evo to vam je negde na početku druge polovine
This
ove
is
strane transkripta.
at the beginning of the
Da li
second
možete
half of this transcript. Can you find it?
Našla sam.
Yes, I
Dobro.
found it.
Jedna mala relacija je blokirana,
A
ali
small
sam
section
htjela,
is
samo ga
blocked,
pitajte u
But I just
principu,
wanted, and would you ask him
Ako
in
bi zvali da
principle,
se
if we
dođe
were
ovde,
to call
bil se
for
moglo.
him to come here, would that be possible?
Znači, da li
So
razumete ovo što ona
do you
pita?
understand her question?
Ja razumem,
Answer, I understand.
mislim da
But
jednostavno ja o ovome, moje je bilo samo da identifikujem osobe,
all
a ne
I
da
was asked to do
komentarišem.
was to identify the persons and not to comment on their
Pa
conversation.
dobro, da li se to slaže sa
Very
onim što
well,
je
but
vama
does that
govorio
agree with what
vaš komandant
your
o
commander
tome da je
said
tamo
to you
otišao na poziv
about him
rukovodstva,
going there
odnosno
upon the
jednog od
invitation of the
glavnih članova
leadership, or rather
rukovodstva
one of the
Republike
main
Srpske?
members of the leadership of Republika Srpska? Answer, yes.
Pa da li je ovo pitanje
Question.
da se opet
So,
dođe tamo sad na
this,
neku drugu lokaciju, je li to jasno?
question
iz ovog
relates to going there to some
Molim?
other location. Is that clear from this
Jeste.
conversation?
E
Answer, yes,
sada,
it is.
molim vas,
Now, will you
on kaže
please
nije ovlašćen i tako da, ona
look at
kaže
it?
znam
It says,
normalno.
I don't have the authority, and she says,
kaže,
yes, I
odmah će da
understand
prenese
that, and he
poruku.
says he will pass on the message
Prenesite
immediately.
da vam kažem, ja kad
Please
budem u svom
convey to
stanu, ja ću
him that
onda da
once
ga
I'm in
nazovem.
my apartment, I will call him up.
Jeste, a onda neću
Yes,
pitati
and
ovo.
then I won't
Dakle,
ask
onda
him
kaže, neće
this.
pitati ovo,
She
nego
says,
ću
I
samo
won't ask
pitati
him
hoće
this,
li
but I will
donijeti
only
ovu
ask
robu
him
ako
whether
može.
he
Jel
will
tako?
bring those goods if he can. Is that right?
A jel
Answer,
to
yes.
znači da će to biti
Does
zamena za ovo
that
pitanje da li oni
mean
mogu da
that
dođu
this
tamo?
will be in place of this question as to whether they
Pa
could
juče vas je
go there?
pitao-
Answer, I can't know that.
Juče vas je pitao
But
gospodin
yesterday,
Najs o
Mr.
kakvoj se robi
Nice
radi.
asked you what kind
A
of
zar
goods
nije
were
jasno
referred
iz ovog
to?
razgovora
Isn't it
da je
clear
to
from
izraz
this
upravo za dolazak
conversation
tamo?
that this is an expression to be
Jer kaže,
used
neću da
instead of
pitam kad se
going
budem
there?
javljala
Because she
ovako, nego
says,
ću
I won't
pitati
put the
da li
question in
može
this
roba
form, but
tamo.
I will ask whether those goods can be brought. Answer, as far as I can remember, the prosecutor Nice didn't put the question quite in that form.
Dobro,
There'd be a matter for us to determine. It's time that we adjourned. We'll adjourn now, as I said, for half an hour, and we'll come back then. Oh, yes.
Your Honour, can I raise a matter? It's to do with the scheduling of matters due to rearrangements today. It causes difficulty for us for obvious reasons. Mr. Topuskovich is in fact dealing with this witness. The other matters, the legal argument, was going to be dealt with by me. I doubt whether we're going to have time to deal with it today, realistically. But I had personal arrangements which it's impossible to break due to the particular day it is.